center of World War II, German tank commanders stared through their binoculars at something that made no sense. 200 Panzer tanks, steel monsters, veterans of Poland, France, and Russia, and standing against them was one gun. Not a battalion, not an airstrike, not a minefield, just a single weapon, small, silent, and never meant to exist. German officers laughed. Then they stopped laughing. Then they started dying. Because by nightfall, entire tank columns were burning, not from bombs, not from artillery, but from a weapon the Germans would later call impossible. This is the true story of a secret gun, rushed into combat, used against overwhelming odds, and how it rewrote the rules of armored warfare forever. By 1942, the war in Europe had changed. Germany's Panzer divisions were no longer just fast. They were invincible. The Panzer III, the Panzer IV, and soon the Tiger. British and Allied infantry watched helplessly as tanks rolled through anti-tank fire like rain. Rifles bounced, machine guns sparked uselessly. Even older anti-tank guns failed at range. Soldiers whispered a terrifying truth. If the tanks come, we are already dead. Entire towns fell not because soldiers lacked courage, but because steel could not be stopped by flesh. Commanders sent desperate reports to London. We need something new, something radical, something the enemy doesn't expect. And deep inside a guarded workshop, Britain's engineers were already working on something that would never appear in newspapers, never be paraded, and was never supposed to be used openly. A weapon so strange that even Allied generals doubted it would work. The idea was almost offensive. Instead of building bigger guns, engineers proposed something different. What if a gun didn't fight tanks head-on? What if it ignored armor completely? The weapon fired a shaped charge, a focused jet of molten metal capable of slicing through steel like a knife through paper. No massive barrel, no thunderous recoil, no heavy armor shield, just precision and terror. It was small enough to be hidden, simple enough to be trained quickly, and deadly enough to destroy any tank on Earth, if used correctly. The problem? It required soldiers to let tanks come very close. Close enough to hear engines, close enough to smell oil, close enough to see the faces of enemy crews. Many officers called it suicide, others called it madness. But one commander made a decision that would echo through history. Send it anyway. The idea was almost offensive. Instead of building bigger guns, engineers proposed something different. What if a gun didn't fight tanks head-on? What if it ignored armor completely? The weapon fired a shaped charge, a focused jet of molten metal capable of slicing through steel like a knife through paper. No massive barrel, no thunderous recoil, no heavy armor shield, just precision and terror. It was small enough to be hidden, simple enough to be trained quickly, and deadly enough to destroy any tank on Earth, if used correctly. The problem? It required soldiers to let tanks come very close. Close enough to hear engines, close enough to smell oil, close enough to see the faces of enemy crews. Many officers called it suicide, others called it madness. But one commander made a decision that would echo through history. Send it anyway. Part 3. The mission no one volunteered for. The Germans were advancing with nearly 200 Panzer tanks, supported by infantry and artillery. The objective was simple: break through Allied lines and crush resistance. Allied defenses were thin. Air support was delayed. Retreat was impossible. Then the order arrived. A small unit would be equipped, with the secret gun emplaced directly in the path of the advancing armor. No backup, no second line, no rescue. The soldiers who received the weapon didn't cheer. They stared at it. Quietly, one man finally said, "So this is how it ends." But they loaded the weapon anyway, because war does not ask if you are ready. Part 4. When the perspective changed. From the German side, the advance looked routine. Panzer commanders were confident. Recon showed minimal resistance. Infantry followed lazily behind the tanks. One officer reportedly joked, "We'll be through by lunch." Then the first tank exploded. Not from the front, not from artillery, from the side. Its turret blew open like a cracked egg. The column halted. Crews assumed it was a lucky shot. Then another tank burned. Then another. No muzzle flashes, no artillery thunder, just sudden death. Tank commanders radioed urgently. "We are under attack, but we can't see the guns." Panic spread, because tanks fear what they cannot fight. The secret weapon worked exactly as designed. Operators waited. They did not fire early. They did not rush. They let tanks pass, then struck weak points. Side armor, rear plates, Engine compartments. One shot, one kill. Crews bailed out screaming. Some never escaped. German infantry tried to advance. But every time tanks stopped, they became targets. The battlefield filled with smoke, fire, and confusion. German officers shouted orders. But doctrine failed them, because this was a weapon that broke the rules. German radio logs from the engagement reveal something rare. "Fear," one commander transmitted. "Enemy infantry weapon destroying tanks at close range. This should not be possible." Another message followed minutes later. "Losses unacceptable. Advance stalled." By nightfall, dozens of Panzer tanks were destroyed or abandoned. Not by air power, not by heavy artillery, but by infantry. Men the Germans believed tanks had already defeated. The word spread quickly through Panzer divisions. "They have a new gun. Do not approach villages. Do not stop." Fear, the same fear tanks once inspired, had changed sides. So why isn't this weapon famous? Why isn't it in movies? Why don't people know its name? Because secrecy mattered more than glory. Revealing its full capabilities would allow Germany to adapt, so reports were buried. Footage classified. Designs locked away. The weapon was improved quietly, copied later by other nations, and became the ancestor of every modern anti-tank weapon in use today. The battlefield had changed forever. The soldiers who held the line, the men who used the secret gun, were never paraded. Many never returned. Some survived, but never spoke publicly. One veteran years later said only this: "We were scared, but the tanks were scared too." And that changed everything. They had stared down 200 machines built to kill them, and they had won. War is often remembered through generals, through flags, through speeches. But history truly turns on moments no one expects. A single weapon, a handful of soldiers, a decision made in desperation. That day, steel learned fear, and men proved something timeless. Even the strongest machines in history can fall when courage meets innovation. The Germans called it impossible. History called it inevitable.